The screaming of metal tearing apart filled my ears as the private jet plummeted through the clouds. Oxygen masks dangled uselessly above us, and the horizon tilted at an impossible angle through the windows. In that moment, as my knuckles turned white gripping the armrests, I made a promise to whatever higher power might be listening. If I survived this, I would dedicate my life to something meaningful. Something beyond the endless pursuit of wealth that had put me on this doomed flight in the first place. If you've ever wondered how close you need to come to death before your entire perspective changes, stick around. This story isn't just about survival, it's about redemption, connection, and how sometimes the most broken paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. If this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this journey of transformation. My name is Eliza Chen, and this is how I almost died in a private jet at 30,000 feet, and how that moment led me to change a struggling single father's life forever. I wasn't always the kind of person who flew in private jets. Growing up in a modest neighborhood in Portland, I was the daughter of Chinese immigrants who worked double shifts at their small restaurant to put me through college. I was the first in my family to graduate, and I carried their dreams on my shoulders as I climbed the corporate ladder at a ruthless pace. By 32, I had become the youngest VP at Meridian Tech, a Fortune 500 company specializing in financial software. My life was a carefully curated collection of achievements: the corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows, the penthouse apartment I rarely saw, and the respect that came with being a woman who had broken through every glass ceiling in my path. What I didn't have was time. Time to call my parents more than once a month. Time to maintain friendships beyond professional networking. Time to question whether the relentless pursuit of success was making me happy. That April morning, I boarded the company jet for a last-minute meeting in Chicago. A major client was threatening to pull their 8-figure contract, and I was being sent to smooth things over. The weather forecast mentioned storms, but nothing that would typically delay flights. I settled into my leather seat, opened my laptop, and barely acknowledged the 2 other executives joining me. 3 hours into the flight, the turbulence began. At first, it was just uncomfortable, the occasional bump that made typing difficult. Then it grew violent. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, tense but professional, instructing us to fasten our seatbelts. I closed my laptop and looked out the window at dark, angry clouds surrounding us. The first lightning strike hit somewhere close enough to blind me momentarily. The second struck the plane directly. What followed was chaos in slow motion. The lights flickered and died. The plane dropped suddenly, my stomach lurching into my throat. One of my colleagues screamed. The other began frantically texting what I assumed were final messages to loved ones. As for me, I sat frozen, my mind suddenly, painfully clear. In what I believed were my final moments, I didn't think about the Chicago deal. I didn't think about my career achievements or my investment portfolio. I thought about my parents, who I hadn't visited in over a year. I thought about the emptiness of my apartment. I thought about how I had everything and nothing at the same time. "I'll change," I whispered, a prayer to no one and everyone. "Just let me live, and I'll change everything." The emergency landing at a small regional airport in rural Ohio was nothing short of miraculous. The pilot, a former Air Force veteran named Captain Reynolds, somehow managed to bring our damaged aircraft down safely despite the electrical failure and one engine being completely offline. We skidded to a stop on the runway, the smell of burning rubber and fuel filling the cabin. Emergency vehicles surrounded us immediately. As paramedics checked us for injuries, I sat on the wet tarmac, rain soaking through my expensive suit, and laughed until I cried. I was alive. Shaking, traumatized, but alive. The airport was too small to accommodate immediate alternative transportation, and the storm had grounded all other flights in the region. We were told we'd need to stay overnight in the nearby town of Mapleton, population 8,542. My colleagues immediately began making calls, complaining loudly about the inconvenience. I stood apart from them, watching lightning illuminate the sky, feeling something shift inside me. The promise I'd made at 30,000 feet echoed in my mind. Change everything. The town's only hotel was a small family-owned place called the Mapleton Inn. It was nothing like the luxury hotels I was accustomed to. The lobby featured worn floral couches and a reception desk staffed by an elderly woman who introduced herself as Marge. She apologized for not having any fancy rooms, but assured us we'd be comfortable. My room had floral wallpaper that had seen better days, a bed with a handmade quilt, and a window that looked out onto the town's main street. I showered, changed into the only casual clothes I had packed, jeans and a simple blouse, and found myself restless. The near-death experience had left me with an electric energy I couldn't contain within the small room's walls. I decided to find somewhere to eat, ignoring my colleagues' invitations to join them for room service. I needed to walk, to breathe, to remind myself I was still alive. The only place open at that hour was a diner called Rosie's. The bell above the door jingled as I entered, and several locals looked up briefly before returning to their conversations. I slid into a booth by the window and picked up a laminated menu. First time in Mapleton? The voice belonged to a man about my age, wearing an apron and holding a coffee pot. His name tag read, Jack. He had kind eyes with smile lines at the corners and dark hair streaked with premature gray. Is it that obvious? I asked. Small town, he said with a shrug. We notice new faces. Especially ones that look like they've seen a ghost. I must have appeared startled, because he quickly added, sorry, that was presumptuous. Coffee? I nodded, and he filled my cup. I was on the plane that emergency landed at the airport, I explained. Still processing, I guess. His expression softened. That was you? It's all over the local news. They're calling it a miracle landing. It felt more like a nightmare until we were on the ground, I admitted. But yes, a miracle works too. Jack hesitated, then slid into the seat across from me. It was so unexpected that I didn't immediately object to the familiarity. I'm supposed to ask if you're ready to order, he said, but it sounds like you might need to talk more than you need a burger. Something about his directness, his genuine concern, made me smile for the first time that day. Both, actually. I'm starving, and I have no one to talk to. Well, you're in luck. Rosie's has the best burgers in 3 counties, and I've been told I'm a good listener. He extended his hand. Jack Sullivan. Eliza Chen, I replied, shaking his hand. Over the next hour, between serving other customers, Jack returned to my table. I told him about the flight, about the moment I thought I was going to die, about the strange clarity that had come with it. He listened without interruption, without checking his watch or his phone. So what are you going to change? He finally asked. You made a promise up there. The question caught me off guard. I had been thinking about it abstractly, work less, call my parents more, but hadn't formulated anything concrete. I don't know yet, I admitted. But something. Everything. Jack nodded as if this made perfect sense. Near-death experiences have a way of rearranging priorities. You sound like you're speaking from experience, I observed. A shadow crossed his face. Different circumstances, same lesson. He glanced at his watch. We close in 15 minutes, but I've got cleanup after. If you're not in a rush, maybe we could keep talking? I should have been exhausted. I should have wanted nothing more than to return to the inn and sleep. Instead, I found myself saying, I'd like that. After the last customer left and Jack locked the front door, we moved to a booth farther from the windows. He brought out 2 slices of homemade apple pie and fresh coffee. So what's your story, Jack Sullivan? I asked. Besides being a waiter who serves pie after hours to traumatized strangers. He smiled, but there was something guarded in his expression. It's not very exciting. I grew up here, left for a while, came back. That's the outline, not the story, I pressed gently. He studied me for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. I was married. Her name was Sarah. We had big plans to leave Mapleton, see the world. Then she got pregnant, and we were thrilled, scared but thrilled. We decided to stay here until the baby was a bit older, save some money, then pursue our dreams as a family. He paused, and I already knew this story wasn't heading toward a happy ending. There were complications during the birth. Sarah didn't make it. His voice remained steady, but his eyes reflected an old pain. Suddenly I was a single dad with a newborn daughter and no idea what I was doing. I'm so sorry, I said, the words feeling inadequate. It was 8 years ago, he said. Lily, that's my daughter, she's the best thing in my life. But it hasn't been easy. I had to drop out of college, take whatever jobs I could find. Currently, I work here nights and do carpentry during school hours. That's a lot to manage alone, I said. We get by. He smiled, but I could see the weariness behind it. Sarah's parents help when they can, but they're getting older. The town's been good to us too. That's the thing about small places, people look out for each other. As Jack spoke about his life, I felt a strange disconnect from my own. Here was a man who had faced real tragedy, who worked multiple jobs to support his daughter, who found joy in simple things like community and homemade pie. And there I was, having panic attacks over quarterly reports and defining my worth by my salary. What about you? Jack asked. What's waiting for you back home? The question was simple but hit me like a physical blow. What was waiting for me? An empty apartment. A job that consumed me. Colleagues who were already annoyed that our emergency landing was delaying an important meeting. Not much, I admitted. Work. More work. No family. Partner? I shook my head. My parents live on the West Coast. I see them a couple times a year. Dating hasn't been a priority. Because of work? Because of work, I confirmed. It's always been about the next promotion, the next project, proving myself. And has it been worth it? He asked, not unkindly. Before the plane incident, I would have said yes without hesitation. Now, I wasn't so sure. It seemed important at the time. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. Perspective is a hell of a thing, isn't it? We talked until the early hours of the morning. Jack told me about Lily, about her love for science and her recent school project on butterflies. I told him about growing up as the child of immigrants, about the pressure to succeed, about the gradual way my job had become my identity. When we finally noticed the time, Jack looked apologetic. I should get home. My neighbor stays with Lily when I work late, but I try not to abuse the favor. Of course, I said, suddenly aware of how much of his time I had taken. Thank you for all of this. It was my pleasure, he said, and I believed him. Will you be in town tomorrow? We're supposed to leave as soon as transportation can be arranged, I said. Probably morning. Disappointment flickered across his face. Well, if you're free for breakfast, Rosie's opens at 6. I'll be here with Lily before she heads to school. I'd like to meet her, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. As I walked back to the inn under a now clear sky filled with stars, I felt lighter somehow. The conversation with Jack had been the most genuine human connection I'd experienced in years. There had been no agenda, no networking, no carefully calculated responses, just two people sharing their stories. Back in my room, I checked my phone to find several missed calls from my boss and a flurry of emails about rescheduling the Chicago meeting. Instead of responding immediately as I normally would, I set the phone aside and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Change everything, I whispered to myself, the promise still echoing in my mind. The next morning, I woke early and headed to Rosie's. Jack was already there, sitting in a booth with a young girl who had his same dark hair and expressive eyes. He waved me over. "Eliza, this is my daughter, Lily. Lily, this is Ms. Chen. She was on that plane that had to make the emergency landing yesterday." Lily's eyes widened. "The one Captain Reynolds saved? That's so cool. Were you scared?" Her directness made me smile. "Terrified," I admitted. "But your dad helped me feel better last night." "Dad's good at that," Lily said with the absolute confidence of a child who adores her parent. "He always knows what to say when I'm scared or sad." Jack looked slightly embarrassed by the praise. "Lily's working on a school project," he said, changing the subject. "Tell Ms. Chen about it." "It's about community heroes," Lily explained eagerly. "People who make our town better. I'm interviewing Captain Reynolds today after school. Dad arranged it." "That sounds wonderful," I said. "He definitely qualifies as a hero." As we ate breakfast, I was struck by the easy relationship between Jack and Lily. Despite the challenges they faced, there was so much love and mutual respect between them. Jack listened attentively to Lily's chatter about school and friends, offering encouragement and gentle guidance. Halfway through the meal, my phone rang. It was my colleague informing me that a car had been arranged to take us to Columbus, where we could catch a commercial flight to Chicago. We needed to leave within the hour. "I have to go," I told Jack and Lily, unable to hide my disappointment. "Back to the important meeting?" Jack asked. "Something like that," I said. Lily looked up from her pancakes. "Will you come back to Mapleton someday? Dad doesn't have many friends who are just his." Jack looked mortified. "Lily, that's not." "It's okay," I said, smiling at her honesty. "I'd like to come back someday." I meant it, though I had no idea how I would make that happen. As I stood to leave, Jack handed me a napkin with his phone number written on it. "In case you ever want to talk about perspective." I took it, tucking it carefully into my pocket. "Thank you for everything." The drive to Columbus was quiet. My colleagues were busy on their phones, preparing for the delayed meeting. I stared out the window at the passing countryside, thinking about Jack and Lily, about their life in Mapleton, about the strange twist of fate that had brought me into their orbit briefly. By the time we reached Chicago that afternoon, I had made a decision. I sat through the client meeting, said all the right things, saved the contract as expected. But my mind was elsewhere. That evening, alone in my hotel room, I called my boss. "Richard, we need to talk about my role at Meridian," I began. "If this is about a promotion after saving the Chicago deal, I'm already ahead of you," he said. "The board was impressed with how you handled it, especially after the flight incident." "It's not about a promotion," I said. "It's about a change." Over the next hour, I outlined a proposal. I wanted to establish a Meridian Tech satellite office in a region we had overlooked, rural communities in the Midwest. I would lead a small team focused on bringing our financial software to small businesses and providing tech education in underserved areas. It would mean a lateral move rather than a step up, possibly even a pay cut, but I was firm. Richard was skeptical at first, but as I laid out the potential benefits, untapped markets, positive PR, tax incentives for rural development, he began to see the business. By the end of the call, he had tentatively agreed to present my proposal to the board. 2 weeks later, I found myself driving back to Mapleton, this time in a rental car packed with enough belongings to last for an extended stay. The board had approved a 6-month pilot program. If I could demonstrate viability, they would consider making it permanent. I hadn't told Jack I was coming back. Part of me worried that our connection had been a product of unusual circumstances, my trauma, his kindness to a stranger. But as I pulled up to Rosie's diner, I felt a nervous anticipation I hadn't experienced in years. The bell jingled as I entered. Jack was behind the counter, filling coffee cups. He looked up, and the surprise on his face quickly transformed into a warm smile that reached his eyes. "Eliza Chen," he said. "I was beginning to think